Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We've got two great presenters from the Ottawa MAPS. They're from Shepherds of Good Hope, but we have Christal and Catherine, and they're going to give a really cool presentation on everything that's happening with the MAP more recently, specifically on the cannabis program. Take it away, Catherine and Christal.
Hi, everyone. That's okay. Thank you. Yeah, still figuring out the tech. Like, if I minimize this, hopefully that's okay. So yeah, my name is Catherine Haxel. I'm a staff at Ottawa Inner City Health. I've been following managed alcohol programming with the inner city kind of my whole time with inner city. So it's exciting for it to kind of evolve into this program now. Christal, perhaps you can introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm Christal Brownlee. I'm the current program manager for the Oaks, located on Maribel in Ottawa. I work for Shepherds of Good Hope. I've been with the organization for 14 years and had the privilege of seeing the MAP program evolve throughout the years and continue to evolve right now.
Great. Thanks, Christal. So I'm helping out with the research side of this program, but also just a bit of a hand with the implementation of the cannabis pilot substitution program. So just for today's presentation, let's see if I can go to the next slide. There we go. So just kind of what our objectives are today, just introducing the Oaks program for those who aren't familiar with the managed alcohol program at the Oaks. Kind of discussing how we got into the cannabis substitution, including it in folks' client care, the substitution pilot implementation itself, specifically for that, kind of some early observations of what we're seeing, because we're about 6 months into the program operations now, kind of where are we now and looking ahead, and then just opportunity for questions and answers in more thorough discussion, but also just to kind of keep things more lively, also to not be just talking at everyone for too long. We're happy to be accepting questions during the presentation as well. Folks are able to raise their hands. I'm hoping I can see when people raise their hands. So if we're not hearing you or responding to you, just please do more in the chat, or so I can see the chat from here. So that's also another way of sharing your thoughts as we go as well. So introducing the Oaks. The Oaks is a supportive housing facility based in Ottawa in the West End residential neighborhood. Hopefully that sound is okay. I'll see if I can mute folks coming in. So it's in a supportive housing facility, a lot quieter than where the MAP program started, because here in Ottawa, it was originally kind of based in the adult emergency shelter program, also operated by the Shepherds of Good Hope. So the Ottawa Inner City Health always kind of works in collaboration with different providers to kind of make sure there's always wraparound supports for individuals. So the Shepherds is like the social housing and social supports provider. And then Ottawa Inner City Health really is focused on the kind of medical operations. So for instance, at the Oaks, there would be like 24-hour medical supports on site. So those are typically our client care workers, also considered like a PSW role. So folks who assist with things like, client care for medications, personal care for folks who might need assistance with like showers and laundry and things like that. Let's see, there's there's currently 60 residents at the Oaks. There's also some collaboration with Canadian Mental Health Association, I believe, as far as some satellite housing nearby. So there's a little bit of overlapping supports for different folks as well, and community clients too, who might not necessarily reside in the Oaks itself, but who visit for like day programming or like have connections to clients and staff there. And the Oaks is, I imagine it's pretty well known amongst the folks who are here. Basically, it's been a very long established managed alcohol program, and very open about the work that we are doing. And so there's been a lot of journalist pieces engaging with our clients, but also just with the research around providing this service. And so for those who are interested, there is a Fifth Estate episode from the CBC called The Pour, which kind of documents the program in more detail and interviewing, talking to clients and whatnot. And it's just really nice to see that representation of this harm reduction service in the media. And we've had folks who visited the program from elsewhere in Ontario, but also people internationally interested in what we're offering here. So MAP kind of went over it a little bit already, but basically Inner City and the Shepherds have been operating or have been offering MAP programming for roughly 20 years. So like I mentioned, originally was starting in the adult emergency shelter in downtown Ottawa. And then in 2010, the Oaks opened as a residential service for people in MAP who were more stable at this point and were, needing housing. And so, the Oaks has really existed ever since. And Christal could speak to kind of how the program has kind of evolved since, but otherwise it's pretty calm, relaxed, mellow vibe there. The MAP care plans for the clients can really vary depending on individuals' goals and individual budgets and just kind of where they're at with their substance use. The alcohol can really range as far as what's being provided to folks. There's alcohol that's brewed on site, or maybe brewed is the wrong word, but produced on site. And then there's also like folks who will pick up out in the community. And then, but it's generally the kind of consistent thing for this program and others, I imagine, is that it's just consistently served by the hour, where folks would be assessed by the frontline staff as far as like levels of intoxication, if they can handle more alcohol at that point. So while I think there was a little bit of tension from what I hear before the program opened in Ottawa, and it took a little bit of some community liaison work to kind of smooth things over. Since then, to my understanding, there's really no clashes with local residents. Sometimes it's just a little bit of the fear of the unknown for folks. So it was a little bit of tension initially, but over now things are very well established. And I guess over 10 years of operations there. Just to point out that, 40% of Oaks clients also identify as First Nations or Inuit. We have a very large Inuit population amongst people who are Indigenous here in Ottawa. And so at this point, there's actually really no shelter-based MAP programming in Ottawa at the moment because the shelter-based program closed a few years ago. MAP still as a service has kind of grown though, and so it's available in a lot of different Ottawa inner city health programs. So we partner and have different supportive housing locations where MAP can be available. So places like our hospice unit or other supportive housing, kind of more on a case-by-case basis, we've established kind of how the service looks. And so it's not very hard to kind of implement in a different site. Let me just take a quick peek in the chat. That's nice. Okay, so I can see a question there. Moving on. And Christal, feel free to jump in if I'm talking too much. Okay, so the cannabis and client care. So we kind of have known for a long time that cannabis use was pretty popular with residents as well. And so it's been kind of something known, but outside of staff control. And so the only kind of real change or exception to this was post legalization and during the the beginning of the COVID pandemic, where it was really important to make sure people were isolating. Ottawa Inner City Health, in partnership with our different program sites, started to provide cannabis to clients just to help them with self-isolation, because a lot of our folks really struggle with, being cooped up in their units. And so especially with how social people want to be, a lot of folks just found it was helpful to at least get a little stoned during the pandemic if you were stuck, cooped up in your space and not really getting to see other people so much. It kind of helped people pass the time a bit. And so some feedback that we also had gotten around the kind of cannabis that people preferred, we applied to when we were purchasing cannabis for this program. So let's see. So with our relationship with CMAPS, or the University of Victoria's research team, the Oaks, we were able to partner with Bernie Polly and Tim Stockwell's team for receiving funding to pilot substitution of cannabis within our managed alcohol program. So they've been really wonderful partners, but pretty hands-off as far as letting us kind of design and implement whatever we think is appropriate. And the fundamental research question for this work is just, how does offering cannabis substitution for alcohol impact managed alcohol program clients? So trying to quantify, changes in people's health, changes in their perception of health, and, how people feel overall is research that we're capturing at the same time as implementing this program. So I've been in the unique role of getting to engage with clients pre-offering the cannabis, so back in December of last year. And then once we rolled out the cannabis in January 2023, checking in with folks every couple of months just to hear their feedback about, how they're doing, while we're collecting data in real time about the consumption trends that are happening in the program as well. So at the moment, we have 36 Oaks residents who have provided consent to share their data with the research project. And this is primarily information on consumption patterns. So how much alcohol are they typically receiving through the program? And then when they are substituting for cannabis, when does it happen, the frequency, stuff like that. And then also information like health outcomes. So things like reported incidents of, falls or liver function test data around like quantifying blood work around their overall health and just their liver function. And so, it'll be interesting to see as we go kind of what that information can communicate with us. Moving on. And I don't know if anyone's trying to raise their hand. I cannot see. So if that is happening, please someone jump in and let me know, because I'm happy for us to answer questions before we get to the bigger Q&A. So the cannabis substitution pilot specifically, a little bit more of an overview of how it's structured. So we partner with a local recreational cannabis dispensary. That way we can have reliable inventory, pretty thorough product knowledge, and just to ensure the consistency of available cannabis for clients. Because that was one thing when we were procuring and providing cannabis to clients during the COVID pandemic across like various different inner city sites. Having consistent product was quite a challenge. So now that we have a strong relationship with one provider, they're able to make sure that we're getting consistent product for folks, because especially if we're talking about changing behaviors for individuals who've been used to certain substances for a long time, we want to make sure that what we were providing to people as an alternative was something that was always pretty consistent. So people knew kind of what they were trying, and that they were comfortable with it. Then, seeing more, kind of trying to create as much of a controlled setting as possible, rather than having kind of a mishmash of different products and then, client confusion, staff confusion, et cetera. So we wanted to keep things as simple and consistent as possible. So we, as I mentioned, initiated the pilot in January 2023. We were very lucky in that at the same time, we've actually been implementing a new, tracking app of how we're providing patient care, as far as accounting for different kind of encounters that staff have with patients. So things like the pours for the managed alcohol program are documented in this application, this online application in real time. And so it's just much more convenient data source for pulling information as far as wanting to see trends of like how much consumption people are having, rather than pulling something and then manually having to assess that information. So it's just really convenient timing as far as when this program was started. We had just kind of initiated this new way of capturing information, which is very, will be really helpful for us to continue evaluating this. So the cannabis that we offer is pre-rolled dried flower, pre-rolled joints. So clients, would be accessing it typically when they would be otherwise getting their managed alcohol pour. So folks would be getting in line for their drink, and then rather than requesting alcohol, they would be requesting cannabis. And so the stock, basically, as far as our routine, is delivered by the dispensary that we partner with. Management accepts it, securely stores it, and then we have a smaller portion a smaller portion that would be like kept near frontline staff, where they would be accessing it more easily for dispensing to clients. And then the kind of cannabis that we offer is sativa dominant hybrid, strong high THC levels. This was the decision for having strong THC kind of also came from the cannabis distribution that we had done during COVID. And the feedback of folks was really preferring strong THC because folks were mainly seeking euphoria from the substances. So let's see, I mentioned that. Yeah, and then also just as I mentioned, the kind of the reliable, consistent product was a really big priority for us for that implementation, just so people would be familiar with the product available. As far as dispensing protocols, we're pretty limited at the moment, and part of that is just because we want to, encourage patient autonomy as well, and kind of their feedback being more the priority for designing protocols. So one thing I found in some consultation with clients prior to providing cannabis was they were interested in like times of day that we would start to provide. And most people were saying that they would probably be interested by like mid-morning. And thankfully that was consistent with our medical staff who were, concerned about folks being experiencing alcohol withdrawal symptoms in the morning or overnight. And so thankfully, kind of these two different cohorts kind of landed in the same place as far as the recommendations that they wanted to see or protocols that they would be comfortable with. And so, yeah, no substitution is currently available during the first 2 pours and the last pour of the day. So pours begin as early as 7:30 in the morning. So in theory, someone wouldn't access cannabis through this substitution until 9:30 in the morning. And then the last, I can't remember what the last pour of the day is, Christal. You'd have to help me out. It was on a previous slide too, but the last pour and the first 2 are when no substitution is available as an option. And then the other protocol would be just no stockpiling of cannabis. So obviously we can't control everything as far as how much cannabis people end up having on their person. Well, we can to a reasonable extent as far as how much we can continue to dispense. So we try to encourage people to not be holding on to too much, basically. And so, again, as far as operational discretion around that, I think Christal could speak a little bit more as far as kind of being more eyes on the program. But yeah, we try not to encourage people to be collecting joints beyond, I don't know, I think it's like a handful or something, or a couple joints for people.
Yeah,
so they can, we
try to say just,
recognize that folks are going to want to share as well. So it's just a question of what kind of protocols can all the different staff kind of live with as well. And so, yeah, so since we, okay, yeah, so since now it's been 6 months of this kind of implementation of the cannabis, and staff are comfortable, clients are comfortable, there's been a lot of uptake so far. We're getting to a place where we are kind of ready to make it a little bit more complicated and interesting as far as diversifying options for the cannabis that would be available. And I'll speak more to that in the next slide, I think. Yeah, so early observations. I mean, it's kind of a given as far as things like munchies and coughing is what we have been seeing lots of. And obviously the coughing is a challenge, but the munchies are promising as far as, a lot of our folks who are in managed alcohol programming because of significant challenges with their alcohol use. A lot of folks, lose their appetite in the process. And it's very challenging to make sure that our patients are getting their nutritional needs met. So this kind of almost cliche observation is helpful as far as we also were able to receive a little bit more funding in the program itself to be allocated to more food for clients, just because they were requesting food with more substance as well, as opposed to kind of lighter snacks, which is typically what they would have been requesting more so before. And then, yeah, so for the coughing piece, obviously most of the clients at the Oaks and a lot of our clients in general are smoke cigarettes. And just from my experience interviewing clients pre-intervention, but also since providing the cannabis, when I've discussed with clients cannabis use outside of the MAP program or the pilot substitution, dried flower was kind of always predominantly the substance or the intake method of choice. And so smoking is pretty like ritualized with our clients, but we've really there's a lot of interest in seeing if we can provide some variety, especially trying to reduce the pressure on people to have to risk challenging their respiratory health. So that's something
I did notice
particularly, actually, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. So where are we now? The
there's
cannabis
actually
substitution's
a
been, as I mentioned,
question.
largely accepted by clients and staff, which is great. Roughly 1,000 joints per month are being dispensed through this MAP substitution. So that's 1,000 less drinks per month that are also going out to our clients. Let's see, and yeah, currently most Oaks clients have access to the available cannabis at least once. Yeah, as I kind of was getting at, there's definitely an appetite now to explore a variety of cannabis dispensing and amongst other programs. So notably, our hospice unit is quite interested in including cannabis in their care planning for patients. Part of that being that we have folks who are almost kind of grandfathered in the sense of they were receiving cannabis substitution at the Oaks. And then we've had like one or two individuals who've when their health declines, and they typically, when someone's nearing end of life with inner city, they would, depending on the kind of health, the situation at hand, we would be transferring them to our hospice unit to get more comprehensive palliative care support. And so we've already had an instance of an individual who was transferred to that program. And then we wanted to kind of make sure that they would still be receiving cannabis because it was something they were like strongly accessing prior. And but because of the conditions with their health and not really being in a position to be smoking, that's where the conversation had opened up around, edibles, oils, all that sort of stuff. And the staff there are very interested in pursuing that, which is great because it kind of needs to be driven by folks who are on the ground. Let's see. Yeah, and then it does raise the question as far as if we can understand the observations of impact. That'll help us as far as determining who we should be asking to help potentially fund this or sustain this cannabis programming, because for the managed alcohol program, folks do contribute financially to the program as well, even though the costs are shared amongst like staff, clients, et cetera. And then like overall program funding. The cannabis isn't, especially if we're accessing it through like recreational markets, not cheap either. And so it is a challenge as far as how to make sure that we can keep the service funded if it's something people are benefiting from. So that's the end of the presentation section so far. I see stuff in the chat, but maybe I will stop sharing at this point. And then we can go from there. Okay.
Thanks, Catherine.
All
I think
right. I do
Christal
see some
might have had a
questions in the
few
chat.
comments.
So Christal, can you see them too?
Yes. So we did have a few questions, which was great. One of the questions is joints only.
Oh
no
my
vape
God, I
only.
had muted my sound. That's why. Oh my God, that's so
I
embarrassing.
kind of assumed.
Wow.
I was like, oh, this way.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. These things happen. So we had chosen to go joints specifically because it worked for our program. A lot of our clientele had already previously been smoking joints. So we kind of already knew what we were going to be walking into. And it was just a lot easier to have those conversations with our residents. Our residents, especially those that have been here long term, they're very well aware that the wine is treated like medication. So they know that it's a very, very important part of what we do. They also recognize that if they were under the influence of anything, if they're presenting as intoxicated, that they can't receive a pour, and that this also applies in regards to receiving a joint. So for us, joints worked better. I could see that, if we were to start doing vapes, I think that it would be really challenging to navigate self-regulation within our population. And it would potentially put us in a position where they would be not as successful. And we're always trying to put people in the position of being successful. So for us, it works really, really well. And it also supports us with navigating our clientele and just knowing them. It works for us. I know that I also, while Catherine was presenting, just in regards to stockpiling, just kind of giving a little bit of insight on what we noticed. That in regards to stockpiling, it was very early on in the substitution program. We would notice, one or two people, they would substitute wine, get a single pre-roll, go out, and the next thing I knew, they were really, really intoxicated later in that evening. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on? So then we'd look at it the next day, and we'd started to notice that what they would do is they would take, five pre-rolls, have them in their pack, and then smoke them all later. So then all of a sudden you've got 8:30 at night. Somebody decides to go smoke 2 or 3 of their pre-rolls. Then they come for the last 4 at 9:30 and they're super intoxicated. And we were like, oh, this isn't working. So that's when we really started having conversations around stockpiling and really navigating that where needed. But it hasn't been a huge problem, just a few people that we've had to kind of navigate around with it. Sorry, I'm just catching up with the questions now.
I'm still so embarrassed about muting those door chimes or nothing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so
it happens.
Geez. Anyways, I see some other questions. So a quick comment also to that, Christal, around the pre-rolls too, because I see it comes up as a question of why pre-rolls as well. Was just the familiarity, kind of as you mentioned, that most folks are already used to using the dried cannabis. I mean, a lot of folks weren't necessarily used to having pre-rolled joints, but there's a couple of factors as far as just for the folks in the audience to understand that the timing of when we wanted to implement this program felt a little tight at one point, and it's also like a real challenge as far as actual enough staff for a lot of elements of this, because there's certainly details that we'd love to kind of finesse as far as variety of product, for instance. But the big challenge at first was just making sure it could be integrated with what staff are already doing. And the staff were so busy as it is that even having to factor in clients needing to roll things themselves, or how would we get the joints into the point where people would be ready to smoke them, that's where the pre-roll purchasing kind of came in. Also, as far as then having consistency of how much volume people are receiving. Also, what was the other question?
If the presentation is complete, we can stop recording and kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the other questions if folks are okay with that.